Hey guys, this is Sneaky Pete with Sneaky Shoot RPG, where the ones are righteous, and one day we'll believe it. Hey, thought I would come to you this evening and share a video about combat in Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition. Everybody's got a video about how combat is done. Well, in case someday I get more than like just a couple subscribers and people get kind of faithful to this channel, I want it to be on here. So we're doing a video about combat in 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons. What is combat? Well, combat is a point where the party, the players, their characters meet adversaries, and and any difference gets resolved in combat. Swinging battle axes, shooting bows and arrows, casting the spells, and it is done with rules. So we're going to go over those rules in this video. The order of combat, pretty simple. First, you determine surprise. Were you able to sneak up on the party of bandits? Were the goblins able to creep through the murk without you noticing them approaching? If anybody is surprised, they're not going to take part in the first round of combat. The first round of combat is not called a surprise round. No, it's not a surprise round. Surprise is only relevant in the first round, but it is just a round of combat. It's the first round of combat. So surprise. The DM is going to determine who is surprised. And then secondly, positions of all the players and all the adversaries are going to be determined by the Dungeon Master. And then he will call to have initiative rolled. And then turns will be taken from the highest in the initiative order down to the lowest, the standard rules. There are many other homebrews and other alternative ways of doing initiative out there. But we're just going to go with the basic rules. That's what I use. It's simple. It's easy. Everyone expects it. It works. Everyone's going to take turns declaring what they're going to do, if they're going to move, if they're going to attack, if they're going to take any of the other actions, if they have any reactions or bonus actions, or extra actions if a perk or a feat allows it. And then once we've gone through all the players and adversaries in initiative order, once the final one, the lowest initiative roll, has taken its turn, we go back to the top of the order until combat is resolved or abandoned by one or both of the parties. So we have surprise. We've already covered that. Rolling initiative. Well, you roll initiative by taking one of these right here, good old D20, and you roll it, and you're going to add your dexterity modifier. So you would roll the die. Wow. At least I got my one out of the way. The ones are righteous. And there it is, right there. I rolled that one, and I'm going to own it. So you roll the D20, you add your dexterity ability modifier, and that is your initiative roll. And then the Dungeon Master is going to roll for the adversaries in the combat. And he can either roll for every single participant separately, or he can roll for groups. A lot of times, if there's like 3 bandits and a bandit leader, the Dungeon Master will roll for the bandit leader, and then he'll roll for all the bandits, and then all the bandits will take their turn in order in the place in the initiative order where that one roll was made. So say he rolls a 15. Once the initiative order gets down to 15, all the bandits will take their turn in whatever order the Dungeon Master determines, like Bandit 1, Bandit 2, Bandit 3. So that is initiative, and then on your turn, well, you get to do all kinds of stuff. What you get to do, unless something is prohibiting you from doing it, you have 2 things you can do. You can take your move up to the distance of your speed, which you have recorded on your character sheet, which is granted by your race, and sometimes background or class might augment that, or certain conditions that you had, not conditions, certain feats, other things can make you faster, or able to move further, rather. You take your move, and you take 1 action. Now, the actions are, well, there's a list of actions that you can take during your turn, and we're going to go through them right now. First, and the most common, is attack. That's where you take your weapon, your mighty battle axe, your bow and arrow, casting the spell. You're going to roll a d20. You're going to add your ability modifier. Melee is strength, ranged is dexterity, spellcasting is the spellcasting ability, be it intelligence, wisdom, or charisma, depending on the class. Then you're going to add your, well, you add that modifier, then you're going to add your proficiency bonus, depending on what level you are and what class depends on what your proficiency bonus is, +2, +3 on up. And then any other modifiers that you might have, like say you have a magic weapon that's +1, then your other modifier is going to be that +1. And you're going to take that against the armor class of the adversary whom you are attacking. And as long as you're equal to or better than the armor class, it's a hit and you roll for damage. Another action is casting a spell, which is a way of attacking, but not necessarily an attack spell. It can be a defensive spell. It can be an environment spell. But casting a spell, unless it states otherwise in the spell description, is an action. You can dash, which means you can move up to twice your speed. Say you have speed of 30 feet, 6 squares. If you take the dash action, now you can move up to 60 feet, 12 squares. But that is your action for the turn. You can disengage. Anytime you step away out of a, like you're in melee and you step out of the adjacent areas of one of your opponents, they get an attack of opportunity because you are moving away from them. If you disengage, you are moving away from them, but you are prepared for anything that might come your way, and there are no attacks of opportunity. But this is your action. It is a way to move away from somebody at melee range where you're next to them, but you are not going to draw an attack of opportunity in doing so. You can hide. You can attempt to hide by doing a dexterity stealth check and an attempt to hide following the rules in Chapter 7 in hiding, which we will not go through at this time. If you succeed, you gain certain benefits as described in the Unseen Attackers and Targets section later in this chapter. You can ready. You can decide that if the goblin steps on that trapdoor, I'm going to pull this lever. So you can basically hold your action for when a trigger occurs. And if the trigger occurs, then you can do your action. Or not do your action. If the trigger does not occur, you don't get to do your action. So you're basically preparing for something that might happen during combat. You can search, you can look for something. You can use an object, like you can open a door. You can throw an inkwell to try to distract someone and have it smash against a wall and skitter along the ground. You can interact with anything in your environment. You can scoot a chair in out of your way. You can put out a candle. In reacting, interacting with your environment, you can do that. There are two other things that I skipped in the alphabetical order that they're in Chapter 9. Because if you're unsure of what to do, there are two actions that really, really help, especially for new players. When in doubt, dodge or help. Dodge, if you take the dodge action, you focus entirely on avoiding attacks. You are uber alert. You are not going to get swung at without your knowing it. And any attacks made on you until your next turn are done so at disadvantage, which means your attacker rolls 2d20s, takes the lesser of the two. So it is going to seriously reduce your ability to be hit by an attack. If you looked at the math video I did, you're going to have a 40% chance of someone hitting you drop to about 15%. You're going to have a 60% chance of someone missing you raising all the way up to 85. So taking the dodge action, when in doubt and you can be attacked, it's a good thing to do if you're trying to figure out what to do instead of sitting there and hemming and hawing for 10 or 15 minutes anguishing over your decision. Go for dodge or go for help. The other action that you can take during combat as your action, you can lend your aid to another creature in the completion of a task. When you take the help action, the creature you aid gains advantage. So whatever they're going to do, they roll 2d20 and take the higher of the two. And you're really, really helping them out because you're taking whatever percentage of succeeding and increasing that by 25. You're decreasing the failure by 25. You're doubling the chances for critical success if it's an attack. And you are virtually removing any chance of a critical fail. So helping somebody is a good thing to do. Alternatively, you can aid a friendly creature in attacking another creature within 5 feet of you. You feint to distract the target, or in some other way team up to make your ally's attack more effective. If your ally attacks the target before your next turn, the first attack roll is made with advantage. Because you're distracting him, boom, the sword comes in. Now the opponent knows he's there, so if he has a second attack, it is not made on advantage. It is just made with a straight attack roll. So actions in combat, things you can do. You get an action in each turn of combat and a move. You can move up to your speed. And then actions, you can either attack, cast a spell, dash, which is double your move, disengage, dodge, help, hide, ready, search, or use an object. Interact with your environment. Let's see here. We're just going over some of the basics. There's a lot more in the combat area of the book that you can cover. But we are going to look at how to make an attack. How to make an attack. Basically 3 things. First, you're going to pick your target. You're mine. Then you're going to determine modifiers. So the DM determines whether the target has cover or whether you have advantage or disadvantage against the target. So if the target has like half cover, you're going to roll at a -2. If the target is at 3/4 cover, like you can see maybe a shoulder and the head, you're attacking at -5. If they have full cover, you cannot attack. And then resolve the attack. You roll your d20, you add your appropriate attack modifier, and anything else, proficiency bonus, whatever, take away the modifications that the DM determined earlier, and you have to hit the armor class or above of your opponent. Attack rolls. Modifiers to the roll. Well, here we go. Let's specify, let's really clarify what we're doing here. Again, the ability modifiers and proficiency bonuses. Ability modifier means if you're attacking melee, that'll be strength. If it is a ranged weapon like a bow or a crossbow or throwing a dagger, they can be thrown, then that would be dexterity. Weapons that have finesse or thrown property break this rule. Meaning, if they're melee and they have finesse, or actually if they're melee and they have thrown, then you're going to roll dexterity. If they are a ranged weapon with finesse where you can, like say a spear, two-handed, and you can swing it. I may have the wrong example, but something like that where it has more range, then that becomes a strength roll because it is melee, it's not being thrown. Some spells require an attack roll. Not all of them, but some of them do require an attack roll, and the ability modifier used for the spell depends on the spellcasting ability of the spellcaster, as explained in Chapter 10. But for example, sorcerer is charisma, wisdom, wizard is intelligence, I think. The warlock is wisdom. I'm not going to look for it right now, but those are the 3 abilities that can be used by spellcasters to cast their spells. Then you also are going to take your proficiency bonus into account. Your proficiency bonus, depending on your class, you will have your proficiency bonus listed on this table right here in this column. And depending on what level you are, you will see +2, +3, +4, all the way down. That is your proficiency bonus. You're going to add that to your attack roll as well. So let's say you're a fighter, melee, battle axe, you've got 15 strength, so that's +2. You have your level 1, so your proficiency bonus as a fighter at level 1 is +2. So that is +4. You're going to roll your d20, add 4. So let's say we roll a 15. We add 4, that is a 19. So anything with a 19 or lower for armor class is going to be hit. Then you roll for damage. If you roll a 1 or a 20, if a d20 is rolled for an attack and it comes up as a 20, the attack hits regardless of any modifiers or the target's armor class. This is called a critical hit, which is explained later in this chapter. And if the roll is a 1, the attack misses regardless of any modifiers or the target's armor class. And I want to find that right now so that way we can cover that immediately. Dee-da. As long as we can find it. And I'm not seeing it, so we're not going to worry about it at this moment. But basically, with a rolling attack, and you roll a critical hit, a 20, not only does spectacular stuff happen, and the DM is going to describe in such wonderful detail the pleasurable hit that you landed on your foe, you also get to roll double damage. So if you are rolling a battle axe and it's 1d8, you can now, with a critical hit, roll 2d8. That's the damage you do to your opponent. Ranged attacks. Let's go through the types of attacks here. We have ranged attacks. You can make ranged attacks only against targets within a specified range, and each weapon will tell you what range, or spell for that matter, will tell you what range it is effective. Ranged attacks in close combat. Aiming a ranged attack is more difficult when a foe is next to you. When you make a ranged attack with a weapon, spell, or some other means, you have disadvantage on the attack roll if you are within 5 feet of the hostile creature who can see you and who is not incapacitated. So if you do a ranged attack with your bow against a goblin who is in the square right next to you, you're rolling disadvantage because that goblin is a lot closer to you and the slightest movement can carry it much further out of your field of view. And that's the reason for that. Melee attacks, basically hand-to-hand combat. Most creatures have a 5-foot reach unless they are tiny or smaller. I believe it is tiny. It's either small or tiny. But either way, medium creatures, large creatures are going to have a 5-foot reach. Where was I? Here we go. Most creatures have a 5-foot reach and can thus attack targets within 5 feet of them when making a melee attack. Certain creatures have melee attacks. Those typically larger than medium have melee attacks with a greater reach because their arms and stuff's bees longer, so they can reach out there a little further. So a larger animal creature can probably attack further than you can if you are medium size. If instead of using a weapon to make a melee weapon attack, you can use an unarmed strike, a punch, a kick, a headbutt, or similar forceful blow, none of which count as weapons. On a hit, an unarmed strike deals bludgeoning damage equal to 1 plus your strength modifier. And you are proficient with unarmed strikes. So that means unarmed strikes, you add your proficiency bonus. 1 plus your strength modifier. That's the damage that it can do. No, okay, the damage is 1 plus strength modifier. In an unarmed strike, you add your proficiency bonus to the d20 roll. Opportunity attacks, as we mentioned earlier. In a fight, everyone is constantly watching for a chance to strike an enemy who is fleeing or passing by. Such a strike is called an opportunity attack, or attack of opportunity. You can make an attack of opportunity when a hostile creature that you can see moves out of your reach. The same when you move out of their reach. They can make an attack of opportunity on you. You use your reaction if you have not done so already. We need to cover reactions and bonus actions. But you use your reaction in order to attack. Doomity boomity boom. Let's go back and do that. Because you've got in a turn of combat, in your turn in one round, you can move. You can take one action. You can also, if granted, various class features, spells, or other abilities let you take an additional action called a bonus action. So you may be able to, say the cunning action feature, for example, allows a rogue to take a bonus action. You can take a bonus action only when a special ability, spell, or other feature in the game states that you can do something as a bonus action. You otherwise don't have a bonus action to take. You can take only one bonus action on your turn, so you must choose which bonus action to use when you have more than one available. So it will tell you what action you can do, or is some spells you can cast it as a bonus action. So you can take bonus actions, which are extra actions, and a lot of times it will tell you if it is a feat or something like that, it will tell you what that bonus action may be. Other activity on your turn. It can include a variety of flourishes that require neither your action nor your move, and this is where role play comes in. The goblin is standing against a wall preparing to strike. You dash across the floor and you take a swing with your battle axe, and as you follow through after the hit, you look down and there's a skull at your foot, and you kick it to the side and you look around for the next victim. A little kick of the skull. I mean, get creative, do whatever, but that is a flourish. That is something that just adds to the story. Come up with stuff. Be creative. Be inventive. You might get inspiration that way. That's a topic for another video. You can communicate however you are able through brief utterances or gestures as you take your turn. Remember, the turn takes 6 seconds. That was about 1.5 seconds to swing. So try to keep what you're saying down to 4 seconds or less. Be realistic about it. Hey, get that switch and let's get the tapestry to fall on him. You could say that. Run over there and grab that rope and untie it and hold on to it, so that way when the brigands run underneath you can release it and the tapestry can fall down and envelop them and we can beat them at will until they stop moving. That takes way too long, so you can't say something like that realistically in character. Keep it realistic. Try to keep it 3, maybe 4 seconds. Just a very few words, enough to get your point across. Enough to get your point across. You can't, So you can also interact with one object or feature of the environment for free. Like I said earlier, shove a chair out of the way, close the door behind you as you're running through it, snuff out a candle, step behind the pillar. You're right there, but say you're hiding behind the pillar. That way, if any attacks come at you, the DM knows that you've got cover now. Other activities on your turn. Then we have reactions. Certain special abilities, spells, and situations allow you to take a special action called a reaction. A reaction is an instant response to a trigger of some kind, which can occur on your turn or on someone else's. The opportunity attack is a reaction. Some spells can be cast as a reaction. The fighter, if he has fighting style defense, he can defend one of his fellow party members if they are next to him with his shield. If they are attacked by a creature he can see, that is a reaction. You only get one reaction from the time you take your turn until the time you take your next turn. If it's the very first turn, you don't get a reaction until your turn comes around. But from turn to turn, you can take one reaction at any point during that time on anyone else's turn. It is a reaction to somebody else. Let's go over movement. You can break up your move in combat. You don't have to move and then fight and then you're done. If you have a speed of 30. You can move 30 feet, 6 squares. You can move 3 feet. You can swing at that goblin, and then you can move. Let's do that differently. Let's say you can move 20 feet, 4 squares to the goblin. Swing at the goblin, and say the goblin is here, and this is the square, 8 squares around him, and you're right here. Then with your final 2 squares of movement that you still have, you can move here. You're not leaving his reach, so you're not invoking an attack of opportunity. You're positioning yourself in a different place. There's an optional rule which a lot of DMs may use where you can flank your opponent, and doing so causes your attack to come at advantage. Let's say we're going to get something out. I got it. It's going to be easier. Oh, let go of it. Let go of it. So let's say your bad guy is right here. Okay? Try to get this to work. It's not going to work. Come on, light. Work right. It's not going to work right. Come on. Okay. Hopefully it'll stay that way. No, it didn't. Daggone it. Alright. Maybe it will with this. Okay, that's better. The cover. Sorry about that. Let's say your opponent is here, and you are right here. You're attacking right here. One of your other party members may come in from this direction and show up directly opposite you. Then they have flanked the opponent, and they can attack with advantage. Meaning that they roll the 2 dice, take the higher of the 2. Moving between attacks, we've covered that. Using different speeds. If you have, like, say, a flying speed or a walking speed, you can switch back and forth between your speeds during your move. Whenever you switch, subtract the distance you've already moved from the new speed. The result determines how much further you can move. If the result is 0 or less, you can't use the new speed during the current move. So let's say you have a speed of 30 and a flying speed of 60. Because a wizard cast a fly spell on you, you could fly 20 feet and then walk 10. You cannot walk any further because you have a walking speed of 30. You have moved 30 on that term. However, you could leap into the air and fly 30 feet more because now you have a fly speed of 60. So you can walk at any point for any amount during the first movement, which is the lesser movement that you have. And then you can complete movement with the greater movement that you have. Difficult terrain, boulder-strewn caverns, briar-choked forests, dead bodies. May there be many. This is difficult terrain. Anytime that you are traveling on difficult terrain, it is half move. Or it costs twice as much. Sorry, it's a double move. So if it costs 5 speed to move into a square, if there's a dead body there, that costs 10 speed to move into it. Up onto a table, perhaps. Something like that. Anytime you're moving onto difficult terrain, which the DM will determine if it's difficult terrain, movement is double. If you can drop prone. Here's one right here. We're going to talk about prone for a minute. If you get knocked prone, or you can drop prone. And the rule is, if you are knocked prone, or you drop prone, in order to stand up, it takes half your move for your turn. So if you have speed of 30, it takes 15 in order to stand up. Some others that I've heard use the rule, in order to get out of a prone position into a standing position, that takes your whole action. I've heard others say that really it's a timing kind of thing. That is how it was intended by Dungeons and Dragons, the creators. Like, say it takes half the move, you like prop yourself up to the side and roll up onto your knees and come into a standing position. In all likelihood, you are able to do something like that. That takes half of your move, so if you have a speed of 30 and you get up from a prone position, then you only have 15 move remaining. But being prone, you can drop prone on your own without using any speed. And if you drop prone, you also get cover on ranged attacks. But then you have to get up, or you can crawl. To move while prone, you must crawl or use magic such as teleportation every foot of movement. While crawling costs 1 extra foot, so it's double movement for crawling. But you can crawl without having to get up and use... Well, basically, that would be using all of your speed anyway, to be quite honest. Because if you crawled at double movement, you would go from 30 to 15. If you stood up and moved, you're using half of your 30 and you have 15 remaining. But as far as the narrative, as far as the circumstance, particularly in an engagement within combat on your turn, it may be advantageous for you to crawl away. It's in the rules, just putting it out there. Other conditions. Well, there is an appendix that gives conditions, and there was something that I wanted to talk about when I was thinking about prone, but I do not recall what it was, so we're not going to dwell on it. That really covers a lot of combat. It kind of jumped around as it came to me. There are other aspects of it. There's 9 or 10 pages, Chapter 9 in the Player's Handbook. Read it over. Watch videos, examples of Dungeons & Dragons being played. It gives a little more perspective as to how combat works. But if you are not new, if you are more experienced with role-playing games, the rules may be different from earlier versions of Dungeons & Dragons. However, you're going to understand what the rules are, and it's just a matter of lather, rinse, repeat. Repetition is the key to insanity. Repetition is the key to insanity. Repetition is the key to insanity. I could keep saying that, but you probably would dislike the video, so I'm going to stop right now. It's cool. It really is. Let's talk. Well, no, we're done. We're done. That's combat. There are other things that could be gone into. But that is it for combat right there. This video is long enough in the tooth as it is. Oh my gosh, 33 minutes. That's okay, because I covered all the stuff that I wanted to cover in this video. And hopefully you guys have found it useful. I appreciate you watching it. I really do. If you did find it useful, please give it a thumbs up. Give it a like. Subscribe to the channel if you've not done so already. Click the little dinger bell thingy down there, right down there, next to the word subscribe, so that way you'll know whenever content is uploaded onto the channel. Share me with your friends and guys. Again, this is Sneaky Pete with Sneaky Shoot RPG. Keep those ones a-coming, guys. Thank you very much. Have a wonderful day.